Over the years, several cut creatures have managed to escape the cutting room floor. For example, Lobotomites were going to be in Fallout 1, they weren't, but they did return years later in New Vegas' DLC Old World Blues. Floaters appeared in Fallout 1, were then cut from Fallout 3, and reappeared in Fallout 76, albeit with a slightly different appearance. And Rad Bats, while appearing in concept art for Fallout 4, didn't make it into the final version of the game. However, the Scorch beasts of Fallout 76 might be considered their spiritual successors, showing us that cut creatures can often re-emerge, sometimes with new designs and purposes. Yet, some creatures have been waiting a very long time for their moment, like the Venus Mantrap from Fallout 2. The Venus Mantrap is a mutated form of some Venus flytrap-like plant. It would have appeared in the Environmental Protection Agency location. You'd be forgiven for not knowing what that is because the entire place was cut from the final version of Fallout 2. The EPA was intended to be an odd assortment of puzzles, fighting, and various weird adventure seeds, such as a bizarre petting zoo filled with hungry humans, a storage room full of new seeds for Arroyo, a clinically depressed Mr. Handy, and so much more, including the Venus Mantrap. Thanks to design documents, we know the plant was going to guard the exterior sections of the EPA, known as the Carnivorous Jungle, and the Chosen One would have to fight their way through in order to enter the building, but they would encounter more plants inside the ventilation shafts to gain access to the EPA proper, using small weapons while navigating the claustrophobic air ducts. While the Venus Mantrap is still cut, even after it almost appeared in the cut game Van Buren, the original Fallout 3, we did get something similar with the spore plants appearing in Fallout 2, and Fallout New Vegas. They are genetically engineered Venus flytraps. It's basically the same thing, just not entirely. But they are so similar that I can't see the original Mantrap design ever being used, but variety is the spice of life, and having different designs for the same creature isn't always a bad thing. And the same goes for this next cut creature, the giant mole rat. Mole rats are mutated rodents that are much larger than their ancestral species prior to the Great War. They have survived as a species by burrowing underground, where the soil protected them from direct nuclear explosions. However, they were still greatly mutated by the subsequent radioactive fallout, increasing their size and aggression. A number of people in the wastes have been known to train and even keep them as pets, and I guess the idea was that some of these pets could grow to an immense size, so large in fact that some people would turn the creatures into mounts. There's only a couple of pieces of concept art for us to view, but one of them shows a bounty hunter or slaver riding atop the giant mole rat, and chained to the beast's tail is a human, maybe a criminal or a slave. Either way, mounts in Fallout would make a great alternative to walking long distances on foot or using the immersive braking fast travel mechanic. There's no more horses, and it's natural for some other creature to fill that role, and I think the mole rat would make for a decent candidate. Large, powerful, and menacing to look at. I'm not entirely sure how large these creatures were going to be, or if they could become even larger than this, but in Fallout 4 there was going to be a mole rat queen. The mole rat queen is a cut variation of the mole rat that's slightly more mutated. Unlike the others, the queen has 6 legs, can produce more mole rats, which then grow into sentries and protect the queen, but the queen can still defend itself, just not in the way you might imagine, as its attack is rather unique and more akin to a Mirelurk queen, spewing acidic vomit onto enemies. While this attack is in the game, the mole rat queen has largely been forgotten, although we did get something similar in Fallout 76 with the Ultracite Titan, a horribly mutated mole rat born from ultracite exposure, yet other than its larger than average size, its similarities to the mole rat queen end here. Still, it's always nice to see a giant version of an everyday creature, but the same cannot be said for this next creature, the blind albino newt. This tiny white lizard was a creature that should have appeared in Fallout 3, living in the pools and streams of Lamplight Caverns. I'm not sure what the newts would have actually done in the game other than being another potential food source for the children, which would have made their survival seem a little more realistic, as the children inside the cave have survived for 200 years, with their main source of food being cave fungus. However, realism isn't always synonymous with Fallout, and that's clear with the Sackbots, humanoid robots cut from Fallout 3. There's not a lot of information surrounding these robots, but I think it's safe to say they would have provided security, although I don't know why they had magnets in their hands, the use of which is unspecified, but it was important enough to write down on the concept art, so I might as well mention it too. The concept art shows us how the Sackbots would have appeared in the game, and it kind of reminds me of the Assaultron, maybe a less lethal version for corporations and businesses. There's not a lot to work with here, but I imagine these robots were eventually shelved in favour of other designs, Protectrons being an obvious one that ended up with a long list of responsibilities, everything from supervisor to ticket inspector, and slapping a different skin on the same robot a dozen times is a lot more efficient than creating another new robot. Time is money, and sadly, sometimes that means we get less. And that becomes increasingly apparent with the Centaurs, mutated hybrids created by joining humans and animals together with the forced evolutionary virus. Despite the potential scale for variants, we didn't actually get that many. There's one-headed, two-headed, and evolved. But there's other types that artwork has shown that have yet to be in the game, and those are the many-headed and the twin variant. The many-headed centaur have multiple heads, as their name suggests, stretching mouths and an extra pair of limbs growing on their back. While ultimately cut from Fallout 4, this centaur variant has appeared in Fallout Wasteland Warfare and on the Magic the Gathering card, Branching Evolution, but still no in-game appearance as they were ultimately replaced with mutant hounds, which is fine, I guess. No, it's not. The Twin Centaur is another type of centaur cut from Fallout 3, and is the result of two people being thrown in the vat of FEV together, creating conjoined twins. And this forced unification caused personality conflicts between them. For example, one would like country music and the other rock and roll, something they would disagree on and fight about. When none of its enemies were present, they would fight again, similar to the two-headed variant in Fallout 1 and 2. And seeing these designs really reminds me that Fallout needs some more abominations, actual gross and sad creatures for us to encounter, and not reskinned humans. Finally, there's the Maypole, a unique glowing one cut from the final version of Fallout 4 due to technical issues. But the model stood at a terrifying height of 300 feet, designed to look like a melting elemental of agony. The name Maypole is fitting considering a maypole is a long pole traditionally used for people to dance around while holding long ribbons attached to the top. The 300-foot ghoul was certainly tall, and the hordes of ferals intended to run around its feet is a reference to that tradition. While the creature was cut, in Winter of Atom, a sourcebook for Fallout the role-playing game, there is the next best thing, Sister Dawn, the Great Glowing One, a 30-foot tall glowing ghoul that wandered the glowing sea, devouring everything in her path, which is a story for another time. The Fallout series has always been full of weird, wild, and downright creepy creatures, and the ones that didn't make it into the games are just as fascinating as the ones that did. Whether it's the Venus Mantrap, the Maypole, or those bizarre centaur variants, they all give us glimpses into just how creative the world of Fallout can be. Some of them might stay lost in the archives forever, but others could still make a comeback in future games, and I hope they do. After all, who wouldn't want to see a giant mole rat you can ride, or more horrifying abominations roaming the ruins? Until then, these cut creatures give us plenty to imagine, and plenty to hope for, in the next Fallout game.